afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Well, reports are out there that the Browns have agreed in principle to a trade that will send Myles Garrett to the Los Angeles Rams for Jared Verse, a first-round pick in 2027, a second-round pick in 2028, and a third-round pick in 2029. Browns were out at their golf outing that benefits the Browns Foundation. Todd Monken was asked about the possibility of Garrett being traded and if he knew that was a possibility.
Well, he's not like any other player. I mean, I'm never told who's going to be on the team, who's not going to be on the team, if that's a question. I mean, every day we evaluate the roster. Andrew evaluates the roster. Management evaluates the roster. And like I said, he's no different than any other player we've got. So I don't know how to respond to that based on, because it's really no different today than it's been for the last however many months I've been the head coach.
Have you been assured he'll be here June 9th?
No, I wasn't assured that when I took the job. I was never assured of anything when I took the job, other than once I signed my contract and whatever my contract said, that's what I was assured. And no matter what any of us coaches sign up for, is we show up every day and we coach the guys that are in the building like we've done since we've been here. That hasn't changed.
Browns have not officially announced the trade. It is expected to be made official tomorrow. Plenty more on the Garrett trade from the Browns golf outing. A little bit later in the show, Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report will join us. Guardians wrapping up a 3-game series with the Red Sox yesterday, looking to take that series 2-1. Game was tied in the 7th inning. Red Sox load the bases in the top of the 7th with 2 outs, and Matsuka Yoshida with an RBI single that will actually plate 2. 6-4 Red Sox take the lead. Still in the 7th inning, Isaiah Kiner Falefa with an RBI single. 7-4 Red Sox with the lead, but they weren't done just yet. Caleb Durbin, that one's big trouble. In the corner, it will go as a 2-run triple. 5 in the inning, and 9-4. The Red Sox win it to take the series 2-1. Guardians have now lost 4 of their last 9, and more troubling, they've been outscored 39-17 during that span. Guardians with a day off, they are headed to New York to open up a 3-game series against the Yankees tomorrow. Joey Cantillo will get the start against Cam Schittler. Yankees have second best record in all of the American League, and it'll be a tough series for the Guardians. They face Schittler, then Rodon, then they will also face Garrett Cole. So we'll get a better indication of where the Guardians are with that 3-game series. Let's turn our attention to the Cavs briefly. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst on the Cavs' potential offseason plans.
There were 2 pathways they could go. One of them was to hold status quo, similar to what the Knicks did, and believe in internal growth. And one of them was to make potentially a major overhaul. And I have not heard any indications that they are interested in making a major overhaul. Now, you don't necessarily do that 5 minutes after you lose. My issue with this team is defense. I think they're going to struggle to get any farther without defending much better. And I don't see how you can internally improve defensively. I think your perimeter defense is the soft spot in the team, and it would be attacked by anybody who played in the playoffs, and that's where they have to make improvement. What he said today, I think he wants to set the tone for the offseason, and he took an optimistic tone. And if he had come out today and been wishy-washy or or cagey, I think it would have resulted in people wondering what major move they were going to do.
Absolutely fair by Brian Windhorst. The other thing, though, is to improve the perimeter defense, it's not as difficult as if you're looking for a second option scoring or a third option scoring. So you can do it. The question is, can you do it enough to move the needle? ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst, the latest on what he's heard regarding LeBron James potentially to the Cavs.
I'm in contact with the LeBron operation regularly. He has not yet decided for sure he's going to play next year. I expect him to do that, but until he decides to play next year, until he negotiates with the Lakers and either decides to move on or that they can't, come to terms, I just can't move past those steps. I'm just going to tell you two things. I don't think LeBron helps the team defensively. I'm telling you, their problem is defense. Okay, they have several challenges, but their biggest problem is defense. He doesn't help you. And if you trade one of your good defensive players, specifically I would say Jared Allen or Max Strus, if you have to trade one of those two guys to get LeBron, I'm not sure you're ahead.
Again, absolutely fair. Plenty more on the Cavs offseason a little bit later this week. But we're going to take a break. Up first, Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. We are talking Browns, and we'll hear from Andrew Berry relative to a potential Myles Garrett trade. Sports for CLE. Be right back.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flair in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flair in your day. Put a little flair in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports for CLE. Browns General Manager Andrew Berry at their golf outing today asked about all the talk about a Myles Garrett trade to the Rams.
Real quick, obviously we wanted today really to be about the Browns Foundation and everything that we're doing, the good work that we're doing there. Not naive that there's a lot in the social media sphere regarding Myles. Nothing is final at this point. We are in discussions of a potential transaction, including him. I'll have a lot more to say about it once it is final, if it does become final. And I'll discuss the details at that point. But we are in negotiations. We're hopeful that we close something here in the next several hours. But nothing's final right yet. So like I said, I'll have an update for you guys maybe as soon as tomorrow when there's resolution.
Well, according to multiple national reporters, this one from Ian Rappaport, Browns trading Myles Garrett to the Rams for Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. Multiple national NFL reporters are saying that is the terms of the deal. Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete, initial reaction, I like Jared Verse. I thought they'd get a little bit more.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. I think you can easily quibble with the picks because you immediately think the Rams are potentially going to be picking 32nd in the draft if they win the Super Bowl. So that pick feels awful in that scenario. And then obviously if they're continuing to be good with those other picks, the next following years, those picks are also going to be low relative to their round. So that part's tough to swallow. And additionally, we have to wait to see what those things become. Just right now, it's Myles Garrett for Jared Verse, which doesn't feel very good. The thing I would push back on is Jared Verse. I think people are either unaware or just underselling how good Jared Verse is. PFF has him at 100 pressures last year, 189 pressures in 2 seasons. Because he came out older, he's 24 when he was in the draft, so he's not yet 26. He's played 2 years in the league. He has up to 3 years left on the rookie deal, though I suppose it won't go that long. And he is right now arguably a top 15 defensive end. So granted, I understand all the feelings and everything that come with the Myles Garrett thing. And I think there was an element to this where you were never going to get a trade that was going to be satisfying to everyone. But you traded what you believe is the best defensive end in the football for the 15th best top 15 defensive end in football, plus a whole bunch of picks. Jared Verse fits in with where the defense is right now. I think a lot of people push back on the I was personally of the belief that Myles Garrett can play until he's 40, and until he doesn't, I still believe that. But just from a projecting this thing forward in terms of Mason Graham, Carson Schwarzenegger, Amanda McNeil Warren, all these guys you've got, Jared Verse is right in that mix of where these guys are right now. So that part is where you sort of look at this and go, I can at least understand. But until this turns into a quarterback, everybody's going to sit here and go, okay, but we had the best player, non-quarterback in football, and we don't have a quarterback. We don't have the best non-quarterback football player in football, and we still don't have a quarterback. So I completely understand where people sit there and go, what did we really get?
That's fair. Here's kind of a thumbnail of Jared Verse. So he was selected 19th overall in the 2024 draft. You mentioned 25 years old. Has been a Pro Bowler. Both of the seasons he has been in the league. Was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2024. The sack numbers and tackle for loss numbers, 12 career sacks, 12 tackles for loss in his 2 years with the Rams. Now, this is interesting. 99 pressures since entering the league in 2024. Only Mike Parsons and Garrett have more over that span. So, again, it's somebody that is generally viewed as a young, ascending talent that has played pretty well. The numbers, they don't play the same style of defense, so I would expect his sack numbers to go up a little bit with the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, Jared Verse is a power player. He goes right at guys, and that allows him to create a whole lot of pressure. And the thing, if you're looking at it like advanced statistics, the thing that sort of hurts him for people is that his pressure to sack percentage is not very good. He's one of the worst in the league, and it's because he's going through guys where Myles Garrett could do that, but certainly so much of what he was just gifted being able to do was just go around them super quickly and get to the quarterback. That's not been Verse's game. And I suspect with Mike Rutenberg and what he wants to do on defense, like I think Jared Verse could fit in really well. I think they could do more blitzing, but it's going to be different. And ultimately, look, my perspective was even with Myles Garrett, I wanted more pass rush, but I'm greedy. Certainly with Jared Verse, we're going to be coming out of this season and going, we need more pass rush, I think. So hopefully they're going to continue to build this thing. And with Verse and Graham and some of the other players they have in there, hopefully it's going to be something that is good and can sustain for a long tenure.
Does he fit the scheme? Will he fit in with what Mike Rutenberg wants to do you think?
I would say that Jared Verse is universal in that you go through guys, you can play anywhere. But particularly with what Rutenberg wants to do, I think he wants to blitz guys a lot. And Jared Verse is somebody who can go because of his power, because of his ability to stunt and create openings for teammates. I think he's going to be super, super valuable in that capacity. So, yeah, I think he's a really, really good fit. It's just going to look different than what they've been doing.
All right. As you might guess, plenty of voicemails about that. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, I'm a little upset with this whole Cleveland Browns traded Myles Garrett for a few reasons. For one, he just broke the NFL sack record. And there's nothing that nobody in the Cleveland media is going to put a spin on this to make me believe this was best for the team when you still have the Predator, Deshaun Watson, who's played 19 games and going on 5 years. And now you're talking about we're going to make him the starter again. You're telling me Myles Garrett's big contract was a problem, so you got to trade him. But Deshaun Watson, you can't get rid of him. You picked a Predator over Myles, and I don't care what nobody says. Myles should have been a Cleveland Brown until he retired. That's my opinion, and I'll probably never watch another Browns game as long as the Haslams own the team.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Again, I get it. The contract wasn't the reason they traded him, though. I mean, they're going to end up extending Jared Verse as soon as they're able to. It wasn't the money. They're looking to get younger and build some assets to try to get a quarterback, just in my view.
Not only that, and this is the part where you sort of argue back and forth, is the whole element of Myles Garrett wanted to be traded. And how long were you going to deal with that? Or are you going to sit here and try to hold on him long enough that you were going to change his mind by doing something that at the quarterback position or whatever that was going to sort of fix the situation? The Browns evidently decided enough was enough. We're going to max out his value now. But I get it. Like, I sit here and it's easy for me to look at this and see that Myles Garrett is still playing in the league at 39. And we are sitting here going, why did we get rid of this guy when he had another 9 years of football and we could have figured this thing out? But they made the call that they did. And so this is where we sit.
All right. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi. His reaction to Myles Garrett being traded.
I think it's exciting because I think this move was made to obtain a franchise quarterback in the future. And the Myles Garrett era was going nowhere in Cleveland. Now, this morning, I doubted that this Rams rumor was serious enough to get a deal done, but they had to obtain Jared Verse in this. You know, they got no one else to play right end. So the fact they got him makes a lot more sense now. Not that he's going to replace Garrett. He's just going to succeed him at that position.
And again, I'm with you, Pete. I don't know if this is going to net you the franchise. I mean, we've been trying to get a franchise quarterback since since they came back in '99, and we're still looking.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, but unless actually trading Myles Garrett got you the quarterback, every step you add is something else that can either be a variable or something else can go wrong. At least with the Paul Warfield for Mike Phipps trade, you got Mike Phipps. Whatever he was going to be, you didn't have to take extra steps. Getting Verse is certainly critical to me. You had to get that, but I hate then doing the mental gymnastics of going, well, if the Browns take this pick and this pick, and then theoretically maybe they can get this quarterback, and maybe that's how it's going to play out. But I don't want to see this team package 3 first-round picks and try to do the whole thing again. You literally have the reminder of why not to do that on your roster with Deshaun Watson. That's part of the reason Myles Garrett has been traded is because you made this plunge to get Deshaun Watson. So I think I'm hoping that's not the route they choose. I'm certainly not going to get caught up and go, oh, the Browns are definitely going to get Arch Manning. I think that's silly. But it's also impossible to deny that anything that is done with Myles Garrett is going to be looked through the lens of were they able to capitalize and ultimately get a quarterback after the fact.
All right, so this is interesting. This is from Benjamin Albright, NFL national reporter. Myles Garrett trade was set in motion the moment the team didn't hire Jim Schwartz. Again, I don't know that for a fact. I do know. I mean, Myles was pretty adamant that putting his seal of approval on Jim Schwartz. Who knows? Myles hadn't come out and said anything. He might come out and say that, but I would tend to doubt he will admit that.
I think ultimately Myles still would have preferred to be traded. I think just the Jim Schwartz thing was one more thing that didn't go his way. So it just added to another layer to this thing of the Browns aren't where I want them to be. That certainly makes this frustrating enough. And then you don't hire the guy I want to be the head coach. It just adds one more element. And look, Myles Garrett is the best football player I've ever watched, but he has always had this notion of trying to make himself more or less an NBA superstar and trying to treat it that way where he wants to be able to control his destiny in that mold. And ultimately he was successful. But that's always how he's sort of viewed his situation or felt like he should be able to view his situation and control that. And when they didn't make that hire, it was just one more element to say, okay, then I get to get what I want, which is ultimately traded.
All right. The question, the big picture question, how much does losing Myles Garrett, adding Jared Verse, I would imagine there has to be a step back of some magnitude for the defense. How big of a step back do you think it is?
It's going to be decent enough because Myles Garrett was a franchise quarterback on defense. He had that big of an impact. You had 3 guys at points. You can pull up clips where they've got all these guys just chasing him around. Everything revolved around what are we going to do about 95 on game day? Jared Verse is certainly a terrific player, but he does not command that kind of respect. So it's going to make a difference. So on the one hand, Myles Garrett had so much gravity that everything revolved around him, including statistics, and that's just because he's that physically gifted. The changeover is, yes, there's going to be a small step back, and ultimately we're going to see more of a democratic stat sheet, theoretically. Mason Graham should hopefully have more sacks because Myles Garrett's not beating him to the punch. Jared Verse should contribute. Like we should get more guys getting in on the action as opposed to Myles Garrett has 23 sacks and everybody else is splitting like the other 7.
All right, so they needed an edge rusher, and we're kind of looking at him before trading Myles Garrett. Now, they did get an edge rusher back. Let's take a look at some of the free agent edge rushers that are out there. You've got Bosa, Van Noy, Clowney has been here, Reddick, Jordan, Miller. Any of these guys interest you? Do any of these guys move the needle? There are some familiar names. Okunrankwo's been here, in addition to Clowney. Your thoughts? Any of these guys help?
The only guys that sort of jump out to me, and I think maybe only Hassan Reddick is realistic. I think Leonard Floyd will go back to a contender. But those are the 2 guys where I sit there and go, they're pure pass rushers. They're probably not specifically only linked to a few teams. Most of those guys, like Von Miller, is probably going to be Broncos or bust. I don't want to deal with Jadeveon Clowney again. And there are a couple guys there where it's like they're going to wait until they can get on a playoff team or somebody they can contend with. Some of those guys may follow Myles Garrett and try to go to the Rams. or there was talk that the Bosas might reunite in San Francisco, that type of thing. So Hassan Reddick is Leonard Floyd. Those are very specific pass rush guys. The Browns have base ends. They have guys who can stop the run, and Jared Verse is certainly that as well. So if they're going to get something, it's somebody that's entirely going to get after the quarterback. So that's where I think they need the most help.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Todd Monken and move past the trade, get a look at some of the things going on with OTAs this week. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. As always, plenty of questions about the Browns quarterback competition. Todd Monken was asked about the QB reps and how they're being divided at the Browns golf outing today.
It doesn't always work exactly every other day, but we've tried as best we can to give those guys equal reps, equal opportunities with the groups, be it the ones, the twos, the threes, whatever that might be. To certainly give ourselves the best chance to evaluate their play within reason. Now, every day is a little bit different in terms of situational football. Some days you're throwing it more than others. Some days are a little bit more red zones. Not every day's equal in terms of their opportunities, but you try as best you can to spread out who they're doing it with.
And Pete, when you listen to him, he's truly trying to make this, he wants to get a feel for what these guys can do. That's why it's not, well, he got 12 reps, he gets 12 reps. It's all right, do I have a sense of what he can do in this formation, in this situation, in red zone, in 2 minute? He's trying to make it so that he gets a feel for what he has at quarterback. That's the takeaway I've had all along with Todd Monken.
Yeah, Todd Monken's been pretty open about the fact that this is all fact-finding. He wants to learn as much as he can. He obviously wants to see guys develop. He wants to give them the opportunity to develop, which is why I don't think he's in any rush to name a starting quarterback. And he's basically said he's looking at the Jags game as saying, I will have a lineup for that game. And I think that's extremely smart because he needs to see pads as well. And I know there are a lot of people who don't want to wait that long, but Deshaun Watson has to prove he can hold up in pads and make plays in some kind of contact. And you want to see if Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel can develop and take what they're doing right now and you know the break they're going to get for the 5-6 weeks and come back to training camp and hopefully be ready to go in a way where now they can sort of really make progress and make this competition interesting. So I think Todd Monken is interesting in the fact that he tells you what he thinks. It's just a lot of people are not happy with how he thinks right now, and he's pretty open about his whole process with this.
Yeah, one of the things that that Monken has done, they've put GoPro cameras on the quarterbacks' helmets as a coaching technique. Monken was asked about that today at the golf outing.
So really there's an audio piece to it that you want to hear what the quarterback is verbalizing, because you're not actually in the huddle, what they're saying in the huddle, and then know what they're saying at the line of scrimmage, and then how loud are they saying it? We talk about all the time of as if you're on the road. So there's an audio piece to that, which is great, but you don't need the camera for the audio piece. You can have a damn microphone. The video piece is really where are they looking within reason, where you can see their eyes, where they start when they start off, when they get up to the line of scrimmage. Are they using the same mechanics from a body language standpoint, whether they start left to right or right to left defensively? Is there anything they're giving away with where they've got their eyes in terms of what you can tell from there? And then what are they seeing? What did they actually see? It's the closest thing you're going to get. Audio is a big piece, and then the video piece of, what they're actually seeing or looking at.
You used it before?
Used it before. you obviously the advantage is being able to use when you get the video and the audio, but that does take time. How do you piece it together for the player? How do you organize it from when you're re-looking at the tape? All right, from point one or point A, from like, okay, you got the call, the huddle, on the field, and then how the play developed. So it's been really cool. It's been a good learning tool for our guys.
Yeah, it's really interesting to listen. I play that whole clip because it's really interesting and it makes sense. It can tell you, are you looking at what I want you to look at, and are you seeing what you're supposed to be seeing relative to progressions?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of the nanny cam element of it to the audio piece, but yeah, the video piece is hugely valuable because pre-snap, where are they looking? What are they sort of checking on in terms of what the defense is doing? And then after the snap, are you going to the right places on your reads? How long are you taking on those reads? Are you getting off of them quickly enough? Are you getting through your progressions correctly? And ultimately, what ends up happening? And I'm curious to see how long they stick with this. If they get in some more team settings or particularly padded practices, if we get in situations where guys are essentially are their eyes on the receivers or are their eyes on the pass rush? Because that's obviously a big component in terms of where your eyes are going, because you want them to be able to see defenders down the field and understand where your guys are open. But if you're constantly looking at the pass rush, that is also very educational as far as where these guys are at and where their eyes should be.
ESPN Browns beat reporter Daniel Fusi talking about the biggest difference between the Browns coaching staff so far that he's observed.
Biggest thing so far, it's really just like 2 weeks left in the off-season workout program or so, is really the on-field attention to detail. And I say that, I mean how involved and how vocal Todd Monken is, in making sure that things are right on the spot. There's been several moments over the past couple of weeks where Monken has, screamed at, the center for not getting the snap count right, or for an offensive lineman for jumping off sides and really pulling. Like we've seen it where an offensive lineman has false started and immediately the play was stopped, and Monken got that player right off the field and brought in somebody else. I remember at the first open OTA practice, he wanted the running backs to run the route a very specific way, and he went so far as to mimic exactly how he wanted it to be done before allowing the drill to continue. So you see a coach that is very attentive. A lot of players have said the same word, accountability, in terms of, making sure that things are done right there. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen as opposed to the previous regime where maybe they weren't as vocal in the moment on the field and making sure that things were exactly as they wanted.
And again, Pete, you needed to change things because they weren't working. So will this work? We'll find out.
I think more than anything, it just speaks to urgency for Todd Monken. He knows this is his shot. So he's going to do everything he can to make sure he's successful. And also, this is a product of a guy being in his first year. Kevin Stefanski had 6 years to sort of do that. So year 6 wasn't going to feel the same way. And maybe Todd Monken will operate camp, assuming he's here next year, the exact same way. And it will be just like this. But I think there's also an element of he's trying to set a very specific tone in terms of how he presents accountability, how these mistakes, and how precise he wants to do these certain things. Will that sort of get not lax, but sort of loosen up when he sort of figures out a real lineup and guys sort of have already figured out how this thing's supposed to go, as opposed to necessarily, a guy makes a mistake and he's immediately going to get yanked from the lineup, to be determined. But the biggest thing with Todd Monken is, you can joke about it, and if he doesn't win, people will laugh at him, but saying, hey, it's 4th and 1 every day. He coaches like it's 4th and 1 every day. Whether or not you want to argue this latest trade is in that mindset is certainly questionable. But nevertheless, like his approach is, I'm trying to get everything out of every practice, every rep, every opportunity he has on the field.
All right, this is kind of interesting. This one's from the Bleacher Report. So it's kind of interesting. It's players that are most likely to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And the number one guy they have is Denzel Boston, Brown's 2nd-round pick. Their wide receiver 2 is Jeremiah Love. 3, Fernando Mendoza, rather, the quarterback they Raiders, number 1 overall pick, then is Price Tate, Jordan Tyson, and Antonio Williams. It's kind of interesting. So they have Boston as their favorite, and I would kind of argue if Boston is the favorite, quarterback play is going to have to be pretty darn good for the Browns.
Well, it's interesting because so much about this comes down to usage, and you've got Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin and Casey Concepcion. So how many targets is he going to get? And if he gets that many, what does that say about the other guys? Does that mean Denzel Boston was just that good? And that would be great for the Browns if he proves to be, better than they even anticipated. Just based on that list, I mean, I looked at Fernando Mendoza and Jimmy I love, and I look at their situations and I go, they're not going to win. Most likely, maybe Mendoza is really surprising. I mean, Carnell Tate's the one that sort of jumps out to me there because I think he's going to get every opportunity with the Titans and Cam Ward throwing him the ball. Whereas Denzel Boston, I think he's got to really, really be good and get a ton of targets. And to your point, the quarterback play's got to be there to make all those things work. And maybe it's a world where, if the Browns are behind a lot, he can get a lot of garbage time stuff and his stats sort of bring him over the top. But I think just in terms of like impact, it's going to be a real tall order for him. But that would say great things about what he could be for this team.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Todd Monken, Sports4CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games away for you and me, Ohio. Light it up. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Todd Monken at the Browns golf outing today asked about Brendan Sorsby, who is having a hearing about getting his eligibility restored for admitting to a gambling addiction. Might have to enter the supplemental draft. Monken was asked about the Browns' interest in him.
Not at all. I mean, it's not even come across my desk. I don't think we're in a position to want to go down that road. That's my opinion. That's not Andrew's. And that I like the quarterbacks that we have. I think that's a slippery slope when you go down that, irrespective of talent, right? In terms of the situation he's put himself in. Like we all know what that is. He put himself in that situation. And we've seen in other sports with players that have been banned for life from playing in professional sports. I think that's a slippery slope to go down that road. Again, that's a question for Andrew and for management. But from my end of it, kind of a tough angle to go down that road and think that that's going to be your franchise quarterback if he's ever eligible to even play in the NFL.
So, Pete, I found that really interesting. I'm not surprised that he said it, but he went real strong on it, which did surprise me a little bit.
It's great to have an old coach who actually understands how listen, his younger days, he's right in the heyday of Pete Rose. Like, it's right there. Like, as he's not wrong. Out of the sport, you can't mess around with this and go, yeah, this guy, the guy who's going to lead our franchise. Like, it's crazy. And that's beyond the practicality of adding what would be a fifth quarterback, assuming he's not suspended. And I think he will be for a significant amount of time. So if he's going to be out for a long time or not, he's not going to be ready to contribute in a meaningful way this year. And you're already on to 2027. So then what did you really accomplish? Now you could say, well, we're just going to take as many swings at this as possible and go, we're going to take Sorsby and a quarterback next year. Okay, but like, is that really the way you want to go? And is this the risk you want to take? And I just don't think I've never understood this fit. And you can certainly say I'm wishing ill upon the Steelers, but a team like the Steelers makes far more sense to me because the Steelers are going to have a really difficult time getting themselves in position to get a top quarterback. The Browns are going to have a much easier time to get one of these kids coming out of college in 2027 and potentially build around them. That's where I think their best path forward is. And like, not trying to take the shortcut of, well, he's a really good player, but by the way, he has a severe gambling addiction and had to be in an in-treatment program for 35 days, and he got suspended for betting on his own team 40 times. Like, it's crazy that you're the team that took Johnny Manziel, you're the team that took Josh Gordon, and you're like, yeah, let's do this again.
That I can't argue with. All right, so this is from ESPN. Browns' best and worst moves of the offseason. They say the best move, checking off a lot of the offensive infrastructure boxes in the draft. Andrew Berry could feel good about landing a number of key guys first few rounds of the draft. The Browns rebuilt most of their offensive line during the offseason. Draft goals included landing a left tackle of the future and some help at wide receiver from whomever ends up playing quarterback. Worst, they say, was signing Zion Johnson to a 3-year, $49.5 million contract. 2025 with Johnson's best season as a pro. Might be damning him with faint praise. Boston College product struggled badly in pass protection on the interior. Routinely gets out-muscled, out-leveraged by bigger players. Gave up 19 quick pressures a season ago. Again, the contract for Johnson is the contract for Johnson. I understand the thought process. They needed a lot of bodies on the offensive line, and they got them.
Look, I mean, if the worst thing the Browns did was sign a guard to slightly too much money, who's 26 and could potentially develop into something great, like this is so much better than they made a really bad trade and, or they signed a player who's 30-something and not going to give you anything. Like, I described this at the time when they made the deal as aspirational. I think that's what it is. Zion Johnson is certainly talented. He could really fit in well next to Spencer Frando. I think those two could complement each other really well. But if the worst thing you're going to tell me about the offseason for the Browns, which obviously was altered a little bit with this decision, but if the worst thing you're going to tell me is the Browns paid a little bit too much for a guard, okay, because they can get out of that contract and move on. Like, this is not something that's going to hold them back and ultimately they have to go get somebody else. It's not ideal, but this is certainly not going to be some disastrous move for them in the long term.
All right, so Browns have running backs that are young in Judkins, Sampson, possibly Rocket Sanders. Could you see them adding a veteran to that mix, or you think they roll with the young guys?
I think they're going to go younger. Based on what I've seen, they could certainly add a veteran, but I think if they were really inclined to add a veteran, why not just re-sign Jerome Ford? Because Jerome Ford did a lot of the dirty work, things that you need a guy to be able to do: block, catch the football, run into pinch. Like, they could have just kept that guy. And I really like I really liked Raheem Sanders coming out of college. I thought he was draftable and ended up being a guy they were able to get his waiver claim as an undrafted free agent. That's fine. He catches the ball out of the backfield really well for a bigger back, and I think they need that short yardage element anyway. But I'm a big Dylan Sampson fan. I think he could be much better with space, and I think really highly of Quinshon Judkins. So short of an injury, I would be surprised. I mean, anything could happen, but I just think they're going to roll with this group and see if they can't figure it out.
Do you think there's an area of the roster that Andrew Berry looks to upgrade between now and the beginning of training camp?
Well, I mean, the defensive depth is big. Corner, you could argue linebacker needs more help. Obviously, defensive end needs bodies. I mean, you could have made the case that they needed more help with Garrett on this team. Could use more help, certainly with Verse, who's a good player, but they could certainly use more help. It's interesting that the Browns on offense added so many bodies to that side of the ball that they're sort of working through them. Tight end is another one where I don't think they're going to, but that's a position group where I go, I don't love what they have. I think they could use more, but it's really defensive depth. They are thin at a couple places, corner being the most obvious, because behind Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell, it's not much.
All right, so this is kind of interesting. Former Brown, one-time Brown, Odell Beckham Jr. returning to the New York Giants, team that he last played for in 2018 before he was traded to the Browns. Visited the team again Monday and is signing with New York. Other wide receiver news: A.J. Brown was in fact traded from the Eagles to the Patriots for a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. So A.J. Brown goes to the Patriots and Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the Giants. That just showed that those are a couple of teams that are struggling at wide receiver.
Well, looking at the Giants wide receivers, they're still awful. Like they've got husks on that offense. I do not love that situation for Jackson Dart, and the Malik Neighbors situation is frankly terrifying based on the medical stuff. Meanwhile, the Patriots situation is really interesting because I was wondering if maybe the Stephon Diggs thing sort of falling out of court, that maybe they just revisit that. And I think the Eagles were. I mean, I know the Eagles were one of the teams that were looking at Garrett, and I thought the only way that was going to be serious if they could get 2027 first-round pick. They didn't, so clearly that they were going to fall short. But you've got Drake May. You're going to try to get as much out of his rookie contract as possible. He was in the MVP conversation. Obviously, the playoffs are going to last a little while in terms of people's memory and how poorly he played in that. But you just keep adding weapons, and hopefully with better line play that they can sort of figure it out. I mean, I worry a little bit about the Patriots. I think they're poised to take a little bit of a step backwards just based on, their quote-unquote offseason. But nevertheless, I totally understand their thought process. We are going to push the pedal to the metal and try to add as many pieces as possible while we've got Drake May on this deal.
Pete Smith, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Pete Smith, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, always good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Tim Bielik joins us. We're talking Browns when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. As we mentioned earlier, the Browns have agreed to trade Myles Garrett to the LA Rams for Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. Adam Schefter and multiple national NFL reporters coming out with the terms of that trade. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, I guess twofold question. I don't think they got enough. I've said that earlier. How big of a step back does the defense take plugging in Jared Verse, who's a really good player, but taking out the best defensive player in football?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the first thing that they didn't get enough for Myles. I thought they always needed to get at least 2 ones out of it, maybe 3. And if you want to make the argument that Verse is worth 2 ones by himself, I guess I could listen to it, because you're talking about a guy who's a 2-time Pro Bowler already in just 2 seasons. He's former Defensive Rookie of the Year. So now the Browns actually have the last 2 Defensive Rookies of the Year between Verse and Carson Schlesinger. But in terms of what this means for the defense, it's a pretty big loss. I mean, it's hard to sugarcoat it. Myles Garrett, I think, had more defensive gravity than really any player in the NFL, and you saw what it meant for everybody else. Now, all of a sudden, you have Jared Verse, who I still think is a very good young edge rusher. He's not Myles Garrett. No one's ever going to be Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett, he's got a chance to be the best pass rusher in NFL history when all is said and done. So you lose that gravity. Now everyone else really has to take a step forward, and they're going to have to work that little extra bit harder to make impact because they don't have 95 drawing attention. What I will say for Jared Verse, our football insiders at cleveland.com are going to see this tomorrow morning, me saying that I don't think they got enough either. But I think the best case scenario you want for Jared Verse is a Trey Hendrickson-like breakout in Cincinnati, because Verse was really good, but he was also surrounded by a lot of really good talent with the Rams, particularly Byron Young, who had 12 sacks last season. Likewise, Trey Hendrickson, people didn't know how good he was when he went to Cincinnati because he had Cameron Jordan with him, and then Hendrickson wins a sack title in 2024. If Jared Verse can have that kind of breakout, then this definitely looks better. But yeah, that said, I felt like you had to go get a second first-round pick, especially because there's no guarantee you're going to be in a position to draft it, one of those top quarterbacks next year unless you're really, really bad.
All right, so this is from Charles Robinson, national NFL reporter from Yahoo. Some context on the Myles Garrett trade between the Browns and the Rams. I believe the Browns internally think they're one more offseason from completing the build. The defining factor here, effectively netting 3 first-round picks of value for Garrett. Verse is still an ascending young star that carries the value of 2 firsts. The icing, the Browns being able to add another first in 2027 to add to their own, giving them the ammunition and flexibility should the current QB room not yielding a long-term starter. And again, that's Charles Robinson from Yahoo. Again, 2 first round. Jared Verse, good young player. But I don't know that you can project, well, we're going to package this pick and this pick to move up. That never works out. That just never works out.
Yeah, I mean, especially if the Jets or the Cardinals get the first pick in April, you could offer 30 first-round picks and they'd probably say no. That's just kind of how it is. When a team is needy needy for a quarterback, and the Browns are, until kind of proven otherwise. But what I will say for the argument that Jared Verse is worth 2 firsts, I can kind of get behind it in the sense that he's a first-round talent. He's been very productive, already 22 tackles for a loss in 2 seasons. I believe PFF had him last year about 80 pressures. And so that's one part of the value. The other part of his value, he has 2 more years left on his standard rookie contract and then a 5th-year option. So the Browns wouldn't even need to worry about paying him for 3 more years. So that takes you all the way up to 2029 before Jared Verse would have to get big money. And who knows what the salary cap's going to look like? Who knows what your roster is going to look like? And who knows what decisions you're going to have to make? But to have at least a young controllable option, for 3 more seasons, and especially one like Verse who's produced very well, I think I can understand why he was as valued as he was in this trade. And he's easily the centerpiece of this trade. While he may never be a superstar, he's already a multiple-time Pro Bowler, and maybe there's another level to him that we haven't seen in 2 years in LA.
Yeah, the style might be different here, and he might, the just get after the quarterback might add to the sack total. We'll find out. Daryl Rotter, Browns beat reporter from 92.3 The Fan, talking about Andrew Berry's resume. He was saying if Myles Garrett was traded, well, he's going to be traded.
If they trade Myles Garrett, it's going to be an awful day. Let's call it the way it is, right? And I almost feel bad for Andrew Berry because on his resume, he will have made the worst trade in NFL history and handed out the worst contract in NFL history. Granted, that was done organizationally with the blessing of ownership and things like that. It's not just on Andrew there. But then he will then have had to trade the greatest player, the greatest defensive player in Cleveland Browns history. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's tough. And the circumstances are what the circumstances are. So in some respects, if Andrew Berry does this, I kind of feel bad for him. But he has a fiduciary responsibility to the Cleveland Browns to take advantage of and maximize any and all assets. And I hate to speak in these terms because we are talking about human beings here, but Myles Garrett's an asset right now. All right? They're not going to lose their way into the number 1, 2, or 3 pick to draft the top quarterback in the upcoming draft class, which they need. They got to take another swing at this thing, right? Assuming Deshaun doesn't work out, and assuming that Shedeur Sanders isn't the second coming, right? So they have to take another swing, and to me, the only way to do that is to acquire some additional first-round draft picks, and really, Myles Garrett is your only vehicle to do that.
Again, I don't think you can't play the get additional assets to get up in the draft. If it's the 32nd pick in the first round, you're not going to be able to move up more than 5 or 6 spots in the draft. That's just not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, the 36th pick is a second-round pick, essentially. I mean, the only difference between that and 33 is the fifth-year option. And whatever value the Browns are going to get is going to come from just where they finish this year, whether they have, have a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick. I mean, I didn't think the Browns with Myles Garrett were going to be, a team picking in the top 10, even with the questions they have on offense, with the talent that they've gotten, especially in the last 2 drafts. You feel like this is a team that's still ascending. So, yeah, I think in a way this lowers, your ceiling and your floor for this team. So now you feel like top 10 pick, much more likely, top 5, maybe we'll kind of see. Certainly injuries can obviously play a role in that. But I mean, there's no question they have to figure out quarterback. They haven't really taken a swing. The last time they really took a first round swing on a quarterback was Baker in 2018. And I think we've learned that, he's just not going to be a Super Bowl winning wasn't going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Cleveland, which is why I didn't have, a problem with the trades that they made. And I still sit here and say, the idea that the Deshaun Watson trade is the worst in NFL history. Until Baker Mayfield or the Houston Texans win 3 Super Bowls in 4 seasons, nothing will top Herschel Walker. Nothing. Because at the end of the day, it's about trophies and Super Bowl rings.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Todd Monken, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, Ohio. Light it up. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Todd Monken, today at the Browns golf outing, asked about integrating rookies into those first-team reps.
And I anticipate the rookies being more integrated. They have already. If you're referring to the O-line, will work that way. The wideouts have already been integrated in that. And then, E-Man's been dinged up a little bit, so that hasn't come into play. But JJ's been with the defense at linebacker, so it's really the O-line guys of working them and getting them up to speed.
It'll be interesting to see, Tim. Fano, by all accounts, is going to end up being the first team. He'll get first-team reps with the line at left tackle pretty quickly. Brailsford, we'll see. But it's interesting to see the way Todd Monken is operating with those.
Yeah, I do kind of like it. Obviously, this was a draft class I think a lot of people really loved. I know I loved that class. I gave it an A+, my post-draft grades. But I do think this is a good way for Todd Monken to kind of set the tone for what he kind of wants out of this team this year. He's talked so much about accountability and, earning things. And that feels like, with rookies having to earn their way in the first team, that there's a lot of sense behind that. You don't want to just give rookies, an opportunity to just play in the first team and not necessarily have earned it. You want to see how those guys progress early, how they're digesting, the offense or the defense. And when you feel like they're ready and they're kind of up to speed, that's when you kind of put them in the first team and be like, okay, let's see what you can do. And, certainly we expect rookies to be littering the starting lineup, or at least the 2D for the Browns, just as we saw last year. It won't be a shock if, it'd be more shocking if Spencer Fano isn't the starting left tackle week 1. It'd be more shocking if Casey Concepcion or Denzel Boston, one of them isn't a starting receiver in a 3-receiver set come week 1, for example. If Emmanuel McNeil Warren isn't your nickel potentially come day 1, that wouldn't be a shocker. if he is your starting nickel, that wouldn't be a shocker, I should say. But, the point is, I don't mind the idea of, guys having to earn it because, you get to a new level, you get to the NFL. It's different than college. You do have to earn, you're kind of starting at the bottom of the totem pole and you kind of have to work your way up.
All right, so without question, with the trade of Myles Garrett, the Browns are probably looking to add edge rusher. Heck, they were looking before the trade. So here's a look at the free agent edge rushers still out there. Bosa, Van Noy, Clowney's been here, not sure that's reasonable. Reddick, Jordan, Von Miller, Barnett, Floyd, Agba, he's been here. Okunranko's been here, and they've had Robinson in for a visit. Any of these guys interest you for the Browns, Tim?
Well, obviously this is a list of really good edge rushers. The question is how many of these guys, are going to want to jump onto a team that, we're not sure, that is not going to really necessarily be competing for a Super Bowl most likely. You look at those guys again, guys like Bosa, Van Noy, Reddick, Cam Jordan, Von Miller, those are all very good veteran players, and I think they can help be another veteran presence. But how many of those guys are going to be, chasing a ring before the career is over? So maybe one of them could be a guy that sticks out there. If you could somehow get Kyle Van Noy after, what he's been able to do throughout his career, I think that'd be phenomenal because he's another guy from a winning background, very successful. Janarius Robinson is an interesting player, former fourth round pick. We'll see, he'd be a much younger guy than some of the guys you get on this list, but it'd be interesting to see if the Browns are able to get one, especially if you can kind of work out a homecoming with Emmanuel Ogbah, who I thought was pretty good. His first time around, still a solid player. I think they could just adding more depth in there, I think wouldn't be a bad way to go. So it'll be interesting to see if they add another piece to edge rush room before week 1.
All right, another topic that has been in the news is Brendan Sorsby checked himself into a gambling rehabilitation facility, went through rehab, now has his injunction hearing to try to get his college eligibility back today. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on if he thinks the Browns will consider Sorsby in the supplemental draft.
He may enter the league with a little suspension, a handful of games, but that's not going to stop any team that really likes him from drafting him in the supplemental draft. I do think the Browns have a level of interest in Sorsby. However, I don't think they're willing to outbid everybody, give up their one or even their two. But, what a coup would it be to steal a guy like this for a third-round pick? It'd be worth it. I'd do it. I'd do it for a third-round pick.
So, Tim, earlier in the show, we heard Todd Monken, and he didn't have much of an interest in that relative to Sorsby and the gambling issue. You've written an article. Take us through it and kind of your thoughts on Sorsby.
Well, I do think it's a complicated, scenario. We're talking about a player with gambling issues in college, and certainly that's the only reason we're talking about it right now is because he might never be able to play it down at Texas Tech, depending on the ruling of this injunction. And if if the injunction comes back that the NCAA's decision of a ban stands before June 22nd, then he could go into the supplemental draft. And it's out, and we'll have to see how this court case plays out. What happens with, the Texas Tech appealing the decision to the NCAA. There's certainly a lot of complicated factors that are going on here with Brendan Sorsby. As far as just the player himself, I think there's a lot to really like about him. I find myself liking him more and more, as we kind of went along, the last few weeks it kind of went along here. But, Todd Monken basically saying he doesn't really have a lot of interest. I think, Todd Monken's not a guy who's going to, sugarcoat things. I think there's a lot of risk there with Brendan Sorsby because of, because of the gambling things in college. You don't want to have to potentially risk a quarterback being suspended because, we saw what happened with Art Schleister back in the day. By no means am I saying that Brendan Sorsby will have, similar issues. I do think that with the player, he's certainly worth, I'd say, a second round. I'd look into it as a second round pick potentially, especially now that you have that bonus one from the Rams. But I just don't know. I'd be kind of surprised if the Browns did it because while I would consider him and redshirt him, that's a lot to kind of That's a difficult decision, and I just don't know if the Browns are in a place to do that.
Yeah, and especially if your head coach is kind of against it, I don't know. That has to count for something, and the talent would have to outweigh that, and I just don't know if it will. Tim, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always good stuff for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.